CGTN, China Global Television Network.
Hello there and welcome to The World Today, live from CGTN in London. I'm Polly Middlehurst. Our top stories this hour. Florida declares a state of emergency over a leak from a toxic wastewater pond that threatens a radioactive flood. Also today, with sports and arts events to test vaccine passports in the UK, we find out about a scheme already in use in Israel. Jordan's former Crown Prince says he's under house arrest, and several high-profile figures are reportedly detained over a plot to destabilise the tiny country. And Egypt's ancient rulers parade through the streets ahead of their transfer to a brand new museum. So the governor of the US state of Florida has declared a state of emergency. That's in response to a possible breach at a reservoir containing toxic wastewater. Local residents have been issued evacuation orders. The story now from Catherine Drew.
The pond causing concern holds 2.2 billion litres of toxic wastewater, and a partial breach could cause its walls to collapse and cause damage to two other nearby ponds, with the risk of flooding at the site and surrounding areas. The pond at the old Piney Point phosphate mine contains waste product from manufacturing fertilizer, which is radioactive. It also holds small amounts of naturally occurring radium and uranium, as well as large concentrations of radon gas, all highly toxic to humans, animals and plant life.
I don't think we're talking of a Katrina level of flooding. We're probably talking about a few feet, an initial sheet of water, and then a kind of flood, flowing of it.
The immediate area of Manatee County is mostly agricultural land and is not densely populated, but lies just 50 kilometers south of the city of Tampa. Access roads and a motorway which run alongside the site have been closed to traffic. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis has declared a state of emergency in the county and has asked residents of over 300 homes around the site to heed local evacuation orders. The breach in the pond was discovered on Friday. Workers immediately began to pump water out of the pond to alleviate pressure, but the situation remains critical.
At approximately 10:30 a.m. on April 3rd today, on-site engineers deemed the situation to be escalating, and all command staff and residents of that area were again issued an evacuation notice. A portion of the containment wall at the leak site shifted laterally, signifying that structural collapse could occur at any time.
Repair efforts have so far been unsuccessful, with toxic wastewater continuing to spew out of the pond. Governor DeSantis is due to visit the area on Monday. The state of emergency declaration allocates funding and resources to engineers as they battle to prevent an ecological disaster. Catherine Drew, CGTN.
Polls have just closed in Bulgaria's parliamentary elections. Nearly 7 million people are eligible to vote. But pollsters have predicted a low turnout because of concerns over COVID-19 and a slow vaccine rollout in the country. Long-serving Prime Minister Boyko Borisov is hoping to secure a new 4-year mandate, but it's uncertain whether his centre-right party will win a majority vote. In Northern Ireland, cars have been set on fire and a police van pelted with petrol bombs during a riot on the outskirts of Belfast. It follows Friday's night of violence when more than a dozen police officers were injured in an area of the capital city populated mostly with loyalists who wish to remain part of the UK. Many are angry about post-Brexit trading arrangements, saying it creates barriers between the territory and the rest of the UK. So England is set to launch a COVID-19 passport trial, which could see the safe return of mass events and help reopen our economy. The government says a certification system is being developed to show whether a person has been vaccinated, had a recent negative test, or has natural immunity. It's going to be trialled at 9 events over the coming months, including a comedy club, football matches, and a cinema screening. Well, our correspondent Andrew Wilson joins us now from Oxford. Andrew, how are these trials likely to work?
Well, we'll get all the details, Polly, from the Prime Minister tomorrow. He's going to include this in his address to the nation tomorrow afternoon. But it does look like these these COVID certification documents or evidence are going to start being introduced one way or the other. They're looking at ways of getting the economy moving again, and that means large events being allowed to take place. So they're looking at the FA Cup semi-finals, the finals as well, the World Snooker Championships up in Sheffield, the Brit Awards in the music industry, areas where people normally would gather together in large numbers. Now, the trial is going to be about testing people before they go in and then getting people to retest after the event, 5 days after the event, to try and get a clean bill of health put to the whole event. They're also going to start looking more at more radical ways of ventilating indoor arenas. But within that, these controversial COVID certification schemes might be put in. Not at all these events, but perhaps at some. The City of Liverpool is part of the pilot programme. They're looking there at nightclubs, at business conferences and the like, so they may start using that system there. How they'll do it? Probably the NHS already has an app where people can book their appointments with their doctors and also order repeat medication. It won't be very hard to include a vaccine certificate into that app as well that people can carry with them. So they're going to start trialling it. Clearly the government's had a change of heart because they were very shy about this issue just 2 weeks ago.
And we've seen some of the prototypes, what it might look like on our mobile phones, for example, Andrew, across some of the British newspapers today. What has the reaction been so far to the idea of COVID passports amongst the public?
Well, the debate started quite a while ago because people became aware that Boris Johnson and the Downing Street team were starting to think about this a couple of weeks ago, and it falls broadly into two pretty strict camps. But those that are against it include far-left politicians like Jeremy Corbyn, the former Labour leader, and Ian Duncan Smith, about as far right as you can get in the Tory party. They agree that they don't like this idea. They think it'll be discriminatory, that it'll put pressure on the hospitality industry because publicans and bouncers and doormen and waiting staff might find themselves having to check people's credentials to be able to come into the hostelry, which they don't want to put onto people. And of course they think it'll create what libertarians call a checkpoint society, where we're divided over those that can pass through a barrier and those that can't. The flip side is that by and large it seems that it's going down fairly well with the public. People who have had their first vaccination and are due perhaps to have their second fairly soon, by and large seem fairly enthusiastic about the idea of COVID passports. It mostly comes from the aviation industry that they've said, look, there's no way people can fly without some sort of proof that they're safe to travel and join other people inside an aeroplane. And that seems to have morphed into the other sectors as well and got the government's attention. Interestingly, Germany has just announced, with their third wave really starting now, that they're going to demand tests from any travellers coming into Germany before they fly. So it's an idea that's picking up some steam across Europe as well as in the UK.
Andrew Wilson, thank you very much indeed. Well, Israel has already established a green pass system that allows people who have been vaccinated or recovered from COVID-19 to take part in activities that Andrew was talking about there, like indoor dining, shows and even sporting events. Let's talk to Tal Schneider, political correspondent at the Times of Israel. She joins us now from just outside Tel Aviv. How's it going in Israel then? And what are the most serious concerns about the green pass? Have they evaporated now?
Yeah. Hello, Polly. Yes, they have been operating the green passport here for a couple of months. Before that, obviously, places couldn't open because you would expect a mixture of people that have COVID or don't have COVID, and then the infection may rise. So in order to overcome that, they came up with the system where you download the certification through the website of the Ministry of Health. Pretty easy process. And since then, I have to tell you, it's been, controlled in restaurants, bars, concert halls, theaters, and, like live shows of sports and so. One place it's not really working, it's shopping malls, whereas the shopping malls have both, food chains and pharmacies, and you cannot really exclude people from going into a pharmacy in the shopping mall. So in the shopping mall, nobody really is checking on that. But then, other than that, on restaurants and bars, it's working.
And Israel's green pass, I take it, is on a phone, is it, Tal?
Where do you take it? You take it from the website. You can download it on your phone or through WhatsApp or through email. You know, it's pretty easy to get that. Once you are either recovered from COVID or vaccinated. Now, we have a huge drop in the amount of people that are infected on a daily basis. This is due to the vaccination. There is a huge rollout here. About 60% of the population already got their vaccination. That's, I think, the biggest number if you look at it globally.
And so what has the public reaction been to this then, Tal? Apart from the initial reservations people had, has it loosened things up? Has it added to people's freedoms when in fact they thought it might be infringing upon their freedoms?
Right now it's added. I mean, we have been through a vacation of 2 weeks of Passover, and you've seen people outdoors everywhere and people indoors everywhere. I mean, sports got to normal, and I think it's made a lot of people, felt easy to participate. I mean, if you're looking at the people that were vaccinated and not on the people who refused vaccination, so it's a huge relief for them. One point which is weird, though, is that kids under the age of 16 cannot get vaccinated, and then places such as, evening dining or a sports hall, people under the age of 16, they cannot participate unless they were infected with COVID and they have, a certificate that proves they were already recovered. But if they are not vaccinated, they cannot go. So that's sort of weird. But, I mean, and there is no other way, I suppose.
Tal Schneider, thanks for that.
Sure, thank you.
Now, countries across Europe are trying to speed up their vaccination rollout programmes in an effort to avert a fourth wave of coronavirus cases. Many immunisation centres are staying open over the Easter weekend to maintain the pace of those rollouts, as Rahul Pathak reports now from Madrid.
The Spanish region of Catalonia says every resident over the age of 80 will be vaccinated by the end of this week. The latest figures by Spain's health ministry found that Catalonia was one of the worst performing regions in terms of immunising the elderly. Now, according to Catalonia's health ministry, they've already begun to address this by speeding up the pace of their inoculation programme. Last Wednesday, they administered 60,000 doses, the highest daily figure since the immunisation campaign began. France is hoping mass vaccination centres like this one at the Olympique Lyonnais Stadium in Lyon will help speed up their inoculation programme. The stadium will be used for vaccinations for the next 2 weekends, with 14,000 people expected to get a jab.
It's great. It's very pleasant. It went very well.
In Italy, over 10 million vaccinations have already been administered, and now Sicilian churches are also helping in the drive to get more people inoculated. Bishops have allowed their parishes to offer vaccinations for a single day over the Easter holiday break. Those aged between 69 to 79 were eligible to receive a shot. It was hoped that large numbers of people would come forward, but less than 6,000 people registered to take part.
There was some hesitancy at the beginning, but then the word spread and people began asking for the vaccine. That is the impression we got. I hope this initiative will happen again, as it's a way of reaching out to communities.
As the issue of vaccine passports is debated across Europe, a small town in eastern Germany has taken matters into its own hands, reopening its bars and restaurants to those visitors who can prove they have a negative antigen test before arriving. Visitors to Augustusburg have to register online to receive a QR code. They then take a test, and if it's negative, the QR code allows them access to the town.
We think it's a very good project. It's great to finally have the possibility, after you've been tested, to go to restaurants and also some shops.
Meanwhile, Germany's health minister has said that fully vaccinated Germans will be free to travel and shop when the lockdown will be eventually eased. Rahul Pathak, CGTN, Madrid.
Well, in news away from the pandemic, Jordan's Deputy Prime Minister says the half-brother of King Abdullah, Prince Hamza bin Hussein, had been liaising with foreign parties over a plot to destabilise the country. The former Crown Prince, who denies any wrongdoing, is among several suspects reportedly detained on Saturday as part of a massive security sweep in the country. Stephanie Fried reports now from Tel Aviv.
Jordan's government is accusing the king's half-brother of pursuing a plot to destabilize the kingdom. Jordanian Deputy Prime Minister Ayman al-Safadi said former Crown Prince Hamza bin Hussein was supported by, quote, foreign entities in his plan. The announcement comes a day after former Crown Prince Hamza shocked the world and Jordan with a recording he released saying he is under house arrest, his telephone and internet freedoms have been curtailed, and he is being warned against communicating with people who may be critical of the government and the king. The video release coincided with arrests of 20 high-level officials linked to an alleged coup plot. The former Crown Prince denies involvement in conspiracies, but these latest developments follow recent meetings he held with local tribal leaders who reportedly voiced support for Hamza. Civil unrest is currently threatening Jordan's stability. In mid-March, Jordanians defied curfew laws to protest the deaths of 6 coronavirus patients whose oxygen supplies ran out at a state-run hospital. In recent weeks, protesters took to the streets again to demonstrate against ongoing nationwide pandemic-linked curfews and increasing widespread poverty. Unemployment in Jordan stands at a record 24%. Jordan is an ultra-conservative society. Jordan is an ultra-conservative society where, according to the Hashemite Kingdom Penal Code, slandering the king or members of the royal family can land a person in jail for up to 3 years. In the wake of the latest controversial developments, Arab leaders throughout the region are expressing support for Jordan's King Abdullah. Israel, a strategic ally that shares a 300-kilometer land border with Jordan, says it is monitoring the situation. Stephanie Fried, CGTN, Tel Aviv.
Still to come on The World Today, how the US is planning to reduce the number of migrants trying to cross its southern border. Details in a moment.
Don't forget you can sign up to our daily newsletter. We bring you all the top business headlines straight to your inbox. So sign up for free at this address. CGTN. See the difference.
More than 100,000 people in Italy have now died from COVID-19.
The vaccination programme offers some hope for the future, but intensive care units are near capacity.
The Spanish government is hoping to vaccinate over 1 million people by next month.
Living in Germany are struggling with their mental health.
Hungary is supplementing the EU's vaccine rollout, buying doses from Russia and China to speed up the process.
4 million people have tested positive in France.
After a grim winter, the promise of a spring bloom that could mean freedom for millions.
Watching CGTN London, welcome back. A reminder of our top stories this hour. Florida declares a state of emergency over a leak from a toxic wastewater pond that threatens a radioactive flood. And Jordan's former crown prince says he's under house arrest while high-profile figures have been arrested for an alleged plot to destabilize the kingdom. Now, with migrants surging at America's southern border, President Joe Biden is being tested to come up with strategies now on immigration. One of the goals of his administration is to improve conditions in Central American nations so fewer people actually want to leave. Alistair Baverstock reports now.
Antonio Peña fled Honduras earlier this year, a victim of extortion by the Mara gangs, and unable to pay, he says he had no alternative. Currently in a Mexico City migrant shelter, he's one of tens of thousands of Central American migrants currently hoping to cross into the US from Mexico.
Many people are fleeing the political crisis, the poverty, natural disasters and violence.
Feeling they can't turn back, they're all headed north.
While migrants' reasons for leaving Central America may be manifold, they all share one final goal: reaching the United States. And with migrant numbers surging since the Biden administration took office, the new president has a plan to reverse that trend by addressing what he calls the root cause of migration: conditions inside Central America. His proposed means $4 billion in direct aid.
Biden's plan, a campaign promise now part of his sweeping immigration bill before Congress, would significantly increase US aid approved during the Obama presidency. The US sent about $2 billion in aid to Central America between 2013 and 2018. Then the Trump administration, angered by those governments' alleged failures to control migration, cut off funds in 2019. Negotiations later restored some of the money. But one of the biggest challenges, according to many analysts, is ensuring the money goes where it's intended and not lost in corrupted bureaucracies.
When US aid money arrives in a Central American state, it is practically impossible to trace, and what actually arrives in the communities that need it most is minimal. So we need a strategy to make sure these funds reach the communities themselves, with minimal and completely transparent bureaucratic processes.
That's why the Biden administration says it's working on tighter rules to guarantee any funds flowing from Washington go directly to communities and programs and not into the hands of government leaders. Alistair Baverstock, CGTN, Mexico City.
Let's take a brief look now at some other news from around the world. In Taiwan, authorities say they've identified 48 of the 50 victims from Friday's deadly train crash. 202 people were injured while 37 remain in hospital. The train derailed after hitting a construction vehicle that slid onto the track. The manager of a construction site has accepted responsibility for the disaster, as has the head of the island's transport department. Flash floods and landslides have killed dozens of people in eastern Indonesia. The island of Flores is the worst hit. Dozens of houses buried in mud or washed away. Rescuers are battling now heavy rain and strong winds and waves. Indonesia's weather agency says more bad weather's on the way, with tropical cyclones approaching. Now, people in Egypt have been treated to a rare spectacle as 22 mummies of ancient kings and queens were taken on a royal parade through the capital, Cairo. The parade was held ahead of their transportation to their new home at the National Museum of Civilization, as Iyasa Hakim reports.
The final moments of preparations after months of efforts to make this vision a reality. The whole country is on a standstill to witness the grand parade of the royal mummies. Here at the main location where the parade will begin, at the famous Tahrir Square, which had witnessed a lot of historical events, including 2 uprisings in the last decade. Once the sun set in Cairo, the procession began with the traditional 21 gunshot salute. Then the 22 mummies, each in their own royally decorated chariots, progressed amidst a dazzling musical and light show, befitting a regal occasion. The mummies on display here are 18 kings and 4 queens who have lived more than 3,000 years ago. They've had a rich history, and they achieved various victories that have served the Egyptian ancient civilization. One of the most famous is Ramses II, also known as Ramses the Great, whose mummy was discovered in 1881. The motorcade took its 5-kilometer route through downtown Cairo to the National Museum of Egyptian Civilization, where Egyptian President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi, along with celebrities and international dignitaries, continued the celebrations. It included an opera performance in the ancient Egyptian language and a documentary about the mummies presented by Egyptian movie stars. The royal mummies are not to lay alone in their new home, as they'll have some of their precious belongings found in their tombs beside them.
This is King Thutmose I's war chariot. We are showing the children and visitors how it was built and operated. This is a fantastic collection of jewellery aged 4,000 years. The UNESCO Secretary General was so impressed, she said international designers should learn from them and imitate these designs in their jewellery.
The kings and queens were placed in a specially built hall of royal mummies. It's a high-tech area that makes you feel as if you've entered a 3,000-year-old underground tomb at the Valley of Kings in Luxor, and it's ready to receive visitors from around the world. Yasser Hakim for CGTN, Cairo.
Now, last year, chocolate confectioners responded to the pandemic by making Easter bunnies wearing face masks. Well, this year's designers have gone a sugar shot further, with vaccine-themed treats proving popular gifts for frontline workers. Penelope Leash reports.
Made of fine Italian chocolate and a decade of experience, this year the Easter bunny is looking a little different.
We wanted to spread some hope with the bunnies. It seems that the only solution is the vaccination. This is our hope. That's why we make a chocolate syringe with the bunnies. This year the Easter bunny brings no Easter eggs, but a chocolate vaccine syringe.
As the health system scrambles to vaccinate as many people as possible, Laszlo Ramozzi has his hands full, using the smallest syringe he could find to create a bespoke silicone mould. Already, the bunnies have proved far more popular than the standard version, with customers buying them for family and those on the front line.
I go to see my GP now. This is for him and his assistant. In the afternoon I'll get my jab, so I also take a bunny to that doctor and her assistant. It's a small symbol that may help to ease the situation of the healthcare workers now and cheer them up a little.
Creativity has played a major role in keeping the shop afloat. They've pivoted away from making intricate wedding cakes, instead creating masked Santas at Christmas and selling their goods at the local market instead of large festivals. Like many others, Laszlo's business suffered significantly during the pandemic. He's had to lay off 4 workers, but is hoping ideas like these will keep him busy until restrictions change. He's already working on a special design for the new year and hopes we can all learn something from the last 12 months.
The fact that the world has slowed down a little due to the pandemic is not necessarily a problem. People tend to think of things they've never had before. This is not so bad.
In the meantime, plenty of Hungarians will be more than happy with an Easter bunny bringing vaccines instead of eggs this year. Penelope Leash, CGTN, Loyoshmije.
Well, that's just about it for the World Today. Thanks very much for watching. We're available on smart TV apps such as Roku, Apple TV, Amazon Fire and Android TV. You can also find us on YouTube and Dailymotion as well. And, of course, online, cgtn.com and on the CGTN app. Coming up next on CGTN London, it's Razor.